So a little while back, we made Mesquite Mead. And during that video, when we were doing the tasting, we said pear might actually go nicely. It might pair with mesquite quite well.
So guess what we're doing today?
Yeah, we're making Mesquite Pear Mead. Simplest way possible though. We're gonna start really, really easy.
So this container should be 3 pounds, but this is the last of our mesquite honey and we want to back sweeten with mesquite honey. So we're not gonna use the full 3 pounds. No, how much are we gonna use, Brian?
2.5. There we go. I also had this in some warm water because this stuff is
it's thick, multiple
it's kind of
seeds.
crystallized. But before I do that, let's actually do the things that we're supposed to do in order. That's right, we need the self-stirring cup because we're gonna hydrate some yeast. And you don't have to do this. You don't have to use all the stuff that we're gonna use to do it, but we actually have a test going right now, and I have to say, just a little teaser, it works. It helps. So we're going to use a 1/4 teaspoon of Go Ferm that I'm going to add to water because I've learned that you don't just put the powder in the bottom of the cup.
See, old dogs can learn new tricks.
Oh, gee, thanks. Now I'm an old dog.
We both are.
All right, so I have my self-stirring cup, which is just from it's not actually from the Nutribullet, it's the Ninja version. The Nutribullet's different. But that way when you do this, it has ribs for the yeast pleasure. And that way it mixes up. You don't have to mix it yourself.
All right, so back to that 4th.
1/4 teaspoon of Go Ferm. Go Ferm is like Flintstones vitamins for your yeast. We've started using it recently, maybe just the last few months. We've seen pretty good results with it. It doesn't need to break up necessarily. That's what they say right on it. I don't understand. And for our yeast, gonna use Lalvin 71B, also known as the Beast. Why do we call it the Beast?
Because in our particular environment, it's like the Energizer bunny. It's just gonna truck along and do what it needs to do.
Yeah, it just works really, really well. If you live in a colder climate, or like you never get past like say 65 degrees, D47 is kind of like the alternate sister to the 71B. Actually works really, really well. Just gonna use half a packet, eyeball it, fold up the rest using my system, tape it, put it in the fridge. But we're actually gonna be making another mead right after this one, so I'm just gonna set it to the side. And self-stirring cup, here's how it lives up to its name. See that? Now, I've been asked, why don't we put the Fermaid O, which is yeast nutrient, why don't we put that right in there too? It could be bad. It could be too much for the yeast, so better to just give them their vitamins, let them wake up a little bit, and then later on, we feed them with nutrients. So I'm just gonna set that to the side. But now, it's time for some honey. As I said, I did actually heat this up. But this stuff is crazy. So I'm just gonna use a spoon, scoop a bunch out, and hope it works. Remember last time we used this, we ended up like filling the container with water and everything to get it all out. But people ask all the time, can you use crystallized honey?
Yep.
Yes. Is it fun? No.
Nope.
But you can do it. I mean, there's other ways. I know if I had heated this like thoroughly for a long time, it would actually work better, but I did what I could because I remembered that this stuff is strong with the stuff. Okay, this is gonna take a little while. All right, I have made an executive decision, and that is 2 pounds of honey. A, because it's easier, and B, because it's looking like there's not a lot of honey left in there, so I don't wanna use it all up. But anyway.
Save you for later. So because we're using our 2-gallon bucket that has the translucent measuring on the side, we can turn that to our side so we can see what the heck we're doing and pour in the right amount of water.
Right, we're gonna fill this to 1 gallon, which is gonna be about 105 to 106 ounces because, in case you didn't know, 1 pound of honey is about 11 fluid ounces. It's like 11.3 fluid ounces or something. So we're just gonna fill it to the 1 gallon mark. All right, so we have about 3/4 of a gallon in here, and it's
thick.
It's thick. There's about 27 C's there. I don't see any reason to not put all the water in though.
Okay.
So let's just fill that right to the 1 gallon. Alrighty, now we mix. At some point, once the spoon end of the spattle is free of honey, I'm actually gonna re-sanitize and use the paddle side because it'll be a lot easier to mix this up. Smells like honey, which it better. All right, could you please clean that?
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of sanitizing, everything that we're using here, the bucket, the spattle, all the tools, the lid, my hands even, have been sanitized in
The red bucket of sanitization!
which is literally a 15 or 18 gallon tub. Off to the side happens to be red. That's why it's the red bucket. We have links to them in the description below. They come in different colors too. You don't have to get red, but you can't call it turbos if it's not red. It's a rule. But anyway, we fill it with star sand mixed with water to the manufacturer's suggestion, and everything just gets put in there, dipped for like 2 minutes, and then, you know, it's sanitized and it's good to use. You do not have to dry it. We get asked a lot of the times, how do we sanitize the towel? Well, here's the truth. We don't. We wash them. They're clean. It's not like we did dishes with it just before we did this.
These are not our dish towels. I actually
No.
have separate towels just for brewing. They do get bleached and cleaned and kept segregated.
Right. But here's what happens. When everything comes out of turbos, you see it. This has star sand on it.
And
We
now,
let it-
so does the towel.
We let it drip onto the towel. So the towel gets sanitized, just not in the way you might think. And this is the deal with sanitization. You can go as crazy as you want. I mean, I've heard of people that put on like the white suits and wear masks and put plastic up. And I think that's a little ridiculous for homebrew. Depending on the circumstances, it might be necessary. But in most cases, I think that's a bit overkill. Do as much as you feel comfortable with. As long as you don't have problems, you're not doing anything wrong. It's kind of like insurance, sort of. It's just you're helping to mitigate the idea that you could have an infection. Infections are usually caused by wild yeasts. That's the thing. A lot of people think it's bacteria and things like that. It's actually wild yeast. Bacterial infection in a brew is not as common. They're pretty rare. Usually it's just wild yeast, which they're in the air. They're on the fruit that you use. They're in the honey you use. So getting rid of all of it is going to be difficult. Most commercial yeast strains are going to overtake any wild yeast that you have. So that's why infections are actually pretty rare. But do the best you can with sanitization to keep it to a minimum. But even the best sanitization methods, you can still get an infection. And even with the worst, you might not get one. So just keep that in mind. Do the best you can till you have a problem, then reevaluate. Do better. That sounded very much like a Saturday school special or something. All right, this stuff is mixing together well because we used warm water and I heated the honey. See, you know, thinking ahead. When your honey looks like that, you definitely have to do something or else you're in for a long day.
Now, by heating the honey, Brian just ran it under warm water for a while and let it kind of soak.
Yeah.
You don't want to boil it. You don't want to microwave it because that's going to kill some of the nuances of flavor and aroma that we want to retain. Otherwise, what's the point of using this nice mesquite honey?
That's very true. The differences are probably pretty minor. I've heard of some people that say, oh, I heat it all the time. And you know what? You do, again, what you feel comfortable with. I am not comfortable destroying the subtle flavors in my honey. This is mixed.
All right.
Okay, so next, Fermaid O. Going to be putting in ½ teaspoon of Fermaid O. What is Fermaid O, Derek?
Fermaid O is a yeast nutrient, but what's important to us is that it's the organic version of the yeast nutrient. So there's nothing in here that we feel strongly against consuming. Now, there are other versions, and if you prefer to use those versions, go for it. That's all you. But you want to know that the organic version, Fermaid O, that we're using
Solidifies.
clumps in humidity, but also there's not a risk of adding an unpleasant flavor if you add too much.
Yeah, it's hard to put in too much.
Those that are not the organic version do have ingredients that can alter the flavor and cause some problems for you.
Diammonium phosphate.
So you want to make sure to not use too much of those and be very careful and read the instructions following.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
follow the instructions carefully.
Yeah, exactly. Follow what the manufacturer says for those. For Fermaid O, I mean, you know, I did a ½ teaspoon. We did a if you do a whole teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, probably not going to make all that much difference as far as it working, but you're not going to harm it either. So it just turns into a bit of a waste. We've actually gone crazy.
That the Fermaid O has a staggered nutrient, 2 additions listed on their instructions.
It does. It says...
We don't do that because we have too much going on and don't have time for that.
We're lazy. It says a 1/4 teaspoon after pitching yeast. Once sugar content is depleted by 1/3 of the original gravity, dissolve an additional 1/4 teaspoon in room temperature water, then add to fermenter. Now, if you want to do that, be my guest. Here is why we really don't do that, because that requires monitoring this like crazy. I'd have to take a reading every day, every other day, twice a day sometimes, to when it reaches 1/3 depletion of the sugars. I don't like to do that. I don't want to mess with it that much. I don't want to be opening this and pulling samples crazy to do that. I'd rather put it all in now, let it run. We're not using super high gravity levels here. What I mean by that is we didn't start with 5 pounds of honey. Please don't put 5 pounds of honey in a 1 gallon batch. It's probably not going to work. You're going to kill your yeast. We hear things like this all the time. People using really insane amounts. Now, if you know exactly what you're doing and you use a proper nutrient schedule and the proper nutrients and everything's perfect, it is possible to do higher gravities like that. It's not something that we really get into. We're a little more of just a laid back homebrewers kind of thing. We don't really want to get too crazy, so that's why we stick to lower. But that said, this is probably still going to be like 11% ABV.
Yeah. Speaking of gravity readings, we're nearly to that point.
We're at that point.
Do you want to go ahead and add your yeast since we did pre-hydrate it? There's a little tiny bit of foam.
Oh, wow. It's foaming. It's foaming. See, when I move it around, yeah. All right, we're good. So I'm going to mix this up real good. This is our yeast with the Go Ferm.
The mention of the foam, if you see foam on top of your pre-hydrated yeast, that means that they are active and doing their job.
You want live yeast.
If you see no foam and all the yeast that you added settle to the bottom and the top creates a clear layer,
probably not alive.
Probably dead.
But you can still try it anyway. After 3 days, if you get no activity from your yeast, pitch new yeast from a different packet. I happen to know that that was from a brand new packet that we just bought the other day.
Now, typically when you pitch your yeast, you want to stir before you take a gravity reading, but I think Brian swirled a little bit in there when he was getting his sample.
Okay. So this is a hydrometer and a graduated cylinder. Although this one, this one's graduated. Yeah, it has numbers on it. Yep. It has a degree and everything. This is how we can determine the starting gravity, how much sugars we have, and potential alcohol level of our brew. Now, before you say, I don't care how much ABV it has, you may not, but your yeast do. Yeah. So that's why it's important to know where you're going to be. And I'm going to use a couple different methods here today. First off, we're at 1.076 for our starting gravity. And you're going to say, okay, well, what does that mean? That is basically the density, how much sugars and other solids are dissolved into this liquid. And I know someone will say that the Fermaid O and the Go Ferm do add to it. If they add a point, I'd be shocked. Okay, they don't add much. They don't add enough to worry about. But what I can do now is take that 1.076 and hold my finger on it and turn it around, and that gives me 10% ABV. There's a potential alcohol scale on the side here. Now, that only works now, and that's potential. It's not exact. If this goes to 1.000 at the end, it's going to be 10%. Any lower, and it'll be a little bit more than that, okay? But the way to use potential alcohol permanently, like skip gravity readings altogether, is, okay, that started at 10. Take your final reading when it's done, subtract those two numbers, you just got your ABV. So you can do it either way is fine. I like to use specific gravity. I think it's just because that's how I learned to do it, so I'm used to it, but neither one is superior for that aspect, because if you know your yeast is a 14% tolerance, as long as you start below 14%, you're fine. It's going to finish out, or should, in theory, finish out.
On a triple scale hydrometer, there's also the Brix measurement, which is just another numeration similar to what specific gravity is.
And I can even go over that with you. 1.076 in Brix is actually about 18, which the interesting thing about that is if you take 76 and divide it by 4, it's about 18, isn't it? Yeah, that's right.
Coincidence? I think not.
Well, it is kind of coincidence in that. It's 4 point something. But that's an easy way to transfer from bricks to specific gravity. So if someone tells you, oh, well, this juice is 20 bricks, you know that that's about 1.080 gravity when you dissolve it into a gallon like that. Pretty simple stuff. And bricks is commonly used for like grapes and things like that to test how much sugar is in the grapes. It's more common in wine than it is in mead and beer making. But all of them work. And bricks has other formulas. I'm not super familiar with it myself, but there's other formulas to calculate ABV and things like that from it. But I've found that the triple scale, honestly, using specific gravity or the potential alcohol works just fine. Just remember that the potential alcohol will actually go down as it ferments, according to the hydrometer, not up, because you need a beginning and an end. That's the important thing.
Yeah, because the key word there isn't alcohol. The key word there is potential.
Right.
So it's measuring how much sugar is in your brew that will potentially lead to an alcohol amount.
Exactly. So now I want to put a lid on this, right? We're at that point.
We're at that point.
This was way too quick and easy.
I know.
We did a lot of talking though, because, I feel like this could be a nice beginner brew. And when you're putting your lid on, make sure you hear that snap, because if your lid doesn't snap, your seal is for crap. But now I need an airlock. So when you use an airlock, make sure that you fill it to the recommended number. This one, generally speaking on these, when they have the bubbles like that, you just fill it to the first bubble and you're fine. What's going to happen now though, is as I put this in, you'll see it'll add some pressure to one side, but as fermentation starts to happen, what's going to happen is the yeast are going to create CO2 and ethanol. Ethanol is the alcohol. That's the stuff you want. CO2 is going to take up a lot of space, so it's going to need somewhere to go. That's why we use airlocks. Super important. Never, ever, ever ferment in a closed up container. You're just making a bomb, and I'm not even joking. It will explode. But what will happen is, as the CO2 starts to escape and the pressure builds, it'll push up this side, pushing the liquid on this side down completely and all the way to this side. And then it'll start to bloop, bloop, bloop. And eventually it'll start to go very, very fast, like this. And then it'll start to slow down, like bloop, bloop, bloop. And maybe even slower than that. And once it looks like it's just about not blooping anymore, that's when we'll be back with our first check. It's been 2 weeks, and you know what that means? It means it's time to take a check on this. It's still sort of bubbling. I mean, it could just be gassy and we're moving it around, who knows? But, it's always worth taking a look. Okay, so as we look inside this, the first thing you might notice is there's like some yellowish clumps on some of those bubbles. And I know some people are freaking out thinking that that's mold or something that you need to dump this for. Not at all. They're just called yeast rafts. It is literally when the yeast just kind of clumps together and floats with the bubbles. It's not a problem at all. It happens. It could potentially be a little bit of wild yeast forming in there, but probably not. But I'm going to take a check on it. I don't think it's done. We'll take a check because, it's open. We'll do it. It's not clear at all. No, it's not totally cloudy either, actually. It's sort of semi-clearing. Semi-clearing. How's that? There's a good term.
It's technical.
But this only started at 1.076, so it wasn't all that high to begin with. It's not done, though.
Super gassy.
Yeah, which makes this reading semi-suspect. I'm using the word semi a lot today.
Heck, dude.
I don't know. So 1.024, still going. Not going to worry about it.
So what do you want to do?
I'm going to pour this back in. All right, so put the lid back on. There was a question as to whether we could go forward with the next thing because, right now this is just mesquite. It's not mesquite pear. We're missing the pear, but it's not done. Do want to get our lid on because, as you know, if it doesn't snap,
your seal ain't crap. I always
Yeah,
say that wrong. Your seal is crap.
Yeah, if your seal ain't crap, that means it's good.
Double negative. Don't do that.
Double negatives. Not a good thing. It ain't not working. All right. See you in a week. All right. So when last we looked at this was a week ago, and it was not done. It was at 1.024 gravity. Today we're going to check it again.
Let me get our gear.
So looking inside, everything looks pretty normal. There's like an odd wisp going through it, but I don't think that's anything to really worry about. It doesn't look like an infection. It doesn't smell like an infection at all. Yeah, that's something that comes up a lot. People get very worried about every little thing that could possibly be an infection. Infections are actually pretty rare. Yeah, it smells good. It smells fine. Okay, so.
Yeast sometimes like to be artistic.
Yeah, I mean, it's all good.
A little spiral.
So, we went in the freezer. Dug out all those pears. They actually look like potato slices, don't they?
Yeah.
And they're frozen. Still. Oh, you know what? I want to take a reading on this before I add the pears.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those days, you know? We do multiple parts of multiple videos in the same day. So sometimes, you know, it gets a little confusing. But I'm curious how much further this went. It was at 1.024 last we looked at it. It's starting to clear a bit. I'm going to call it as close to done as it can be without taking the second check that we normally do. But it's sitting at, looks like 0.998. What does that mean? We started at 1.076, right? So if I switch that around, it's sitting right around 10% ABV right now, which is about where we expected it to be. I'm just going to carefully pour this in, tip it down the side. Now at this point, you might be thinking, okay, but shouldn't you rack this now because you have all that headspace? Well, I don't think we're going to have much headspace once all these pears get added. And yes, at this point, we could rack, pasteurize, and then put everything in, and that would probably prevent further fermentation completely. But we're actually not that concerned about more fermentation. And this is something that we've been playing with lately when we add fruit like this. If it ferments a little more, it's okay. But we're nearing the end of what the yeast really would want to work with. In other words, there's a lot of alcohol already in here and things like that. So they're not as likely to want to ferment more. So
also, we didn't thaw our pears first, so we're putting frozen little
these are pear
chunks.
cubes. They're ice cubes.
They're pearsicles.
Pearsicles. That's the good one.
And yeast don't like to do their job when it's cold.
So maybe we can throw them into a little bit of dormancy. Now, here's the thing. It is going to thaw out eventually, obviously. And at that point, they might be stressed to where they just stay dormant. They might not even come back. But, as I said, even if they do, not all that concerned. We usually like to leave fruit sitting for 2 to 3 weeks. Because this is frozen, I'm thinking the longer side is probably a good idea because it's going to take a couple days for this to fully thaw. This is going to be very cold. My hand is freezing right now.
And pear is a delicate flavor,
Yeah.
so we don't have any concerns about over-extraction that's going to be too peary.
Right.
It's not going to be too peary. All right, so now we got our pears in there.
Time to seal the sucker up.
I didn't get a snap.
Nope.
There you go.
You don't get a snap, your seal's crap. We need that t-shirt. Without a snap, your seal's crap. Can you imagine walking through a grocery store with that t-shirt
I
on?
was like, what?
Yeah. By the way, speaking of t-shirts, if you look just below this video, there's a little shelf down there with all of our merch in there. We don't take like corporate sponsors and stuff for the most part. So, you know, we want you to buy t-shirts, like stuff, you know. Anyway, that's our sales pitch for the whole thing. That's it. That's all I got.
That was lovely, babe.
I don't want to sound like one of those YouTubers, okay? They know what I mean.
Awkward.
Yeah, well.
All right, so we're going to let this sit for 3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
And we'll be back then.
Okay, it's been 2 weeks on the fruit. Let's pop the lid open and take a look inside. Looks like brown pears.
They're ugly.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just oxidized from, you know, sitting there in liquid for 2 weeks. Everything looks fine now.
Some yeast buildup, but other than that, they're fine.
And it smells good. It smells like pears.
Yes,
Really
smells
does.
lovely.
I gave this a couple of swirls along the way.
I have as well.
Be honest. Oh, good. I was going to say we abused this one, but if you did and I did and we didn't even realize we did, then it did fine. So what I want to do is get another reading on it. It was at 0.998 last time. Then we added the pears. So let's just find out, you know, did it do anything further since then? Because the pears might have fermented a little bit. We don't really know. And that it's okay. I'm not all concerned about, you know, a couple more points of gravity or whatever that it might have burned through. I'm just curious where it's at. If anything, it went down 0.996. So let's use the calculator teacher said I would never have handy and do some math here. 1.076. And I'm just going to take it to the 996 because that's what it's at. Minus 0.996 is 80 points used up times 131.25 gives us 10.5% ABV. Reasonable. So what we want to do today is rack this. If I pour it right in, I'm going to make even more of a mess than this is already going to be. Pears, much like apples, tend to disintegrate when fermented or sitting in liquid for too long. So I'm expecting there to be significant amounts of goop, sediment, stuff to deal with. But as always, when we rack, we use an auto siphon, put the destination lower, source higher, and just put it halfway down, give it a couple of pumps to get it going, and then let it do its thing. All right, so we've racked it, and there's very, very, did I say very little headspace here, which is ideal. You actually really want it that way. Now, sometimes we have just moved forward with alterations and additions at this point to finish this out. We're not going to today, and here's why. Do you see the clarity or lack thereof that is in this particular brew? And that's from the pears breaking down and all that kind of thing. There is going to be some pectic haze in this one. I don't really care to add pectic enzyme to it. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm not all that worried. But I would like this to settle out a little bit more before we start doing final additions, because if we do final additions right now, then we're going to pasteurize it and then it's all going to be right there. But if we let it settle, then we do additions, then we pasteurize, a little bit more will fall out. So this might actually get just a little bit clearer. So we're trying natural clarity here.
Now, is it necessary? No, it's just another way of doing things.
Exactly. Just another way of saying there's no need to rush it. One more week. This was at 0.996 when last we checked. I don't know that it changed, but hey, you know, there's only one way to find out. That's right. Take a reading. I think that's like my answer to everything. It really is, though. Like, you know, oh, I think my mead stalled. Did you take a reading?
It tells you a lot of information.
I think it might be done. Did you take a reading? I think it stalled. Did you take a reading?
You already did that one.
So it was so good that I mentioned it twice. Is it 996 last time? As soon as it stops bouncing around, I can tell you. 996. 0.996.
Fantastic.
Which means it's still at 10.5%.
So we are going to rack it to our pitcher. It has Starcian fluid still in it.
And do final adjustments. I just got a splash on my hand and tasted it.
Was it nice?
No.
No. Okay.
Not so far.
All right.
So I like to take the sample and pour it right into the pitcher of awesomeness. The POA. POA. I don't know. Every time we talk about the pitcher, now I just have to mention, every time we talk about the pitcher, someone purchases it and says, okay, I thought you guys were joking, but it really is awesome. Literally every single time somebody says something to that effect. Because it really is an awesome pitcher. I don't know how else to say it. We're not kidding. It's not just a meme. It really is that good. People have found them in different sizes. They found them in various places. It's just that good. If you can't find it in a place locally, please buy it using one of our links. We'll call it the sponsor of this show. I don't know, whatever you need it to be. We get a little bit of commission. It doesn't cost you anything more.
All right, so as you can tell, we're racking now.
Yeah. Just had to do the ad, you know, got to pay the bills. So it's been racked. But now we got to taste it to see what we got to do to it. And based on the little bit of splash that I got off the back of my hand, I don't have super high hopes at this moment. But, you know, when they're dry like this and young, they're not always great.
It smells nice.
Yeah, well, I could be wrong, too. Maybe just the back of my hand tastes bad. It smells okay. There's a little youth in there. I'm getting into... Yeah, there's a young note there.
My opinion, the smell is much better than the flavor.
Uh-oh.
You got goosebumps?
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps.
That's not a good thing.
Okay, so it could definitely need more sweetness.
Yep, and we just happen to still have some mesquite honey. It's completely crystallized, so we got to do this the hard way. And I know somebody's out there going, you could just add hot water to it. We could, but then we'd be diluting it, defeating the purpose. So
we could also put it in a warm water bath, but
we
quite
didn't
honestly,
do that ahead of time.
We're filming, and that takes time.
Yeah, so I'm just going to scoop a bunch of this crystallized honey in there and deal with being sticky. This is my favorite thing in the whole world to do. Can you tell? This is going to take a little while, though. Yeah, crystallized honey, you can totally just use it. It's all good. It'll mix in. It just is a bit more difficult to work with. As you could probably tell by my face, I'm not real happy about this. I know I mentioned that already, but it was worth repeating. I don't know how much I want. I think this last glob. Right there. That's all I need. This and nothing else. Just this last little drop. And I got to get it all in there. This is just such a nice, neat job. There are times being a home brewer is not my favorite thing.
You want me to help here? Or?
Sure.
All right, I'll stir, you scoop.
Gotta get it off the sides. This is one of those moments you have to touch the sides. Get it? Operation.
Takes a very steady hand.
Mm-hmm. You have to touch the sides. Oh, God, it's all over the handle. Everybody has weird things, okay? That's my weird thing. I got a few of them, but that's one of them. And now we get to mix it all in. So see you in about half an hour. After 14 hours of mixing.
It wasn't that bad.
It was like a minute and a half, maybe 2. Still smells the same. There's not enough honey in there to really...
More honey notes.
Right? Still smells really young to me. I got to be honest, I'm not overly thrilled with this one so far. Yeah, that smells really young. There's a faint honey note on the nose now, though. Sweetness level's not bad.
But you want more honey character.
Yeah.
So I have a crazy idea.
What's your crazy idea?
I'm looking at that mesquite honey jar and looking from this advantage point. It doesn't look like there's really that much left in there.
No, not really.
So we could pour some of this in there, swirl it around now, but that's going to oxygenate it.
Yeah, that's the problem with doing that.
Right.
I'm not a fan of that.
Okay.
So I got to get sticky again.
I'll do it.
All right, here you go. No argument. Okay, so 27 hours later, we got all the honey out.
I got a good job of it out.
She did an amazing job.
And this is a good lesson. It
took her like 5 minutes, just so you know.
If you have a partner and you're brewing together, play to your strengths. If one of you really doesn't like sticky stuff, then the other one should probably deal with the sticky stuff.
On the other side, I'm starting to get like arthritis too, so it hurts to try to do that. But regardless, she's got a strong point. So I'm thinking with that amount of honey, this is probably going to be right where we want it. Can't see it being a bad thing.
Yep. But because we are adjusting...
A little more honey smell, but not that much.
We might want to think outside of the box.
We don't have any more pear to add to this. I think that's kind of nice.
That's kind of nice. Do you want a splash of vanilla?
See, I was thinking about that too.
Do you want
I don't think
pour
so.
a little bit in the glass and add a microscopic splash of vanilla as a tester?
I don't think I want vanilla.
Okay.
I'm thinking the vanilla might take this a direction that I wasn't expecting. I kind of want the fruitiness of the pear to show. Adding vanilla is going to take that away.
Yeah. We don't have...
More acid would be bad. Do we have any wine tannin?
We do.
This is feeling a little flat. And what I mean by that is like in the mouth, it doesn't have any staying power.
Okay.
I think just a touch of wine tannin
tannins
might work. All right, so we have wine tannin. You could use tea, but if we were going to do tea, we wanted to do it earlier. Because if you just add a tea bag now, it could over-extract very, very quickly. So you don't want to do that. And if you added a cup of tea at this point, now you're diluting it, which if we were going to do that, we would have just added it to the honey and done it that way. We're only at like 10.5%. That's why I don't want to dilute this. If this was 13 or 14%, I probably would have just added honey, water to the jar and done it that way. So I'm going to do a half teaspoon of wine tannin. I think the sweetness level is perfect. I don't want to sweeten it any more than it already is.
All right, so let's take a note of the wine tannin additive. Do you want me to stir the wine tannin or just let it stay there because we need to take a gravity reading to see what...
You can stir. You know what? Just leave it.
It
Just leave
tends
it.
to be a big gloppy mess.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
So we're just gonna let it sit there.
But I am going to take the reading, like you said, to find out where we sweetened it to. I'm going to bet probably somewhere around like a 1.020. We seem to hover around that number quite often. 1.024.
Okay, so at this stage, we are going to rack this into a fermentation vessel, add an airlock, and then we'll see.
Pasteurize.
Oh, right. We have to pasteurize because
Yes.
we added honey. Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
if we don't pasteurize or stabilize this in some way, it has a very strong potential of fermenting further, being that it has not hit, it's 71B. Yeah, this would totally re-ferment. Which, if you want more alcohol, that's not a problem. But we just spent all that time adjusting the flavors to get it to where we want it. So you'd have to do that again if it did re-ferment.
Also, we're all out now of mesquite honey other than that little tiny residual. So
that's not enough to sweeten anything.
we're not going to risk it.
Maybe a
we're going to
cup
go
of
ahead and
tea.
pasteurize it.
Yep. And we'll see it in like a week after we do that. All right, so like a week ago, we made additions to this, pasteurized it. You just saw it, so you know. And now we're going to give it a taste. It smells pretty good.
So there is a bunch of loose sediment in the bottom, and as you can probably tell from your vantage point, this really hasn't cleared very much.
Nope.
And neither one of us are concerned about that.
It's got a haze, but it's not like pea soup.
And because there is sediment in the bottom, after we are done with this video, we are going to still let it sit in this container.
A long time.
And see if maybe it clears out with time.
Yeah,
Which
I
less
mean-
times they do.
This will be traveling to the new house in this kind of situation, though.
Yeah.
Like, we'll just have
We
to put it in a
might-
box and let it sit for a long time once it gets there.
Either that or rack it and then, we'll
Nope.
just let it sit.
Just leave it. Just let it go.
All right. But in the glass, it is hazy, but it
Looks like cider.
is a decent color. It's like a tan.
On the smell,
That's fantastic.
it smells almost like it's been oaked.
It's very fruity. It's very pear on the aroma.
Yeah.
It's like
Honey and pear. And
Pear
it literally
pie.
tastes like wood. Like, that's the mesquite in the mesquite honey
Yeah,
coming through a
yeah.
little bit. It doesn't smell like mesquite. I will say that. Because
No.
mesquite has a very unique smell. But it definitely smells like it's been oaked.
it smells fantastic.
It's woody.
I could smell this for an extended period of time. I won't because you'll be bored by then, but
I don't know. Somebody's going to say that they would watch you smell that for hours or
I
something.
love the aroma. And if you love aromas like I do, then make some of this.
Yeah,
Right,
there's-
for the aroma alone.
There's like a little bit of almost a spice in there.
Yeah, it smells like a pie.
Yeah.
Like-
Pear pie? Is pear pie a thing? I've
don't-
never had a
I
pear
don't know.
pie. I know some people put pears in their apple pie. Then it's a pear apple pie.
I don't know.
Anyway, I don't know. I'm going in for a smell. Taste. Wow. The pear is so strong on that now. I do not remember the pear on the last time we made adjustments to it.
That is a lovely sensation in the mouth.
Very juicy.
It has a bit of the coating from the honey.
Yeah.
But because it looks like pear, it smells like pear, and it tastes like pear, you attribute it to eating a pear. You know how they kind of have that soft texture, that like,
It's like a pear with a little bit of honey drizzled on top of it.
yeah, it's.
Now
that is-
we added wine tannin. That's where I'm getting the oaked thing from, because we added just a half teaspoon.
Well,
of
the
it.
mesquite honey has that
Yeah,
oakiness
so I think
to it too.
those two together.
Those two
is what's
together
doing
worked really well.
it. This actually came out lovely. It's a very simple idea, a very simple concept, but it was just building on a theme. Like, we did the mesquite honey mead, and then we just added the pear to it, and wow, it took
was
it in
when
a
we
whole
were
different
doing-
direction.
I think it was when we were doing the final tasting of the mesquite
Yeah, that we
mead.
suggested this. That we said pear.
Pear, yeah, and that was
Pairs with it well.
It certainly does. This is lovely.
It's juicy. That's what comes out. It's juicy. Like, fills your mouth. It's got a really nice mouthfeel, but it's not overly tannic. But the juiciness just
It's
it,
like
bursts in your mouth.
You grew your own pears. You have this pear tree in your backyard that you inherited from your grandma or your grandpa or some person that really knew what pears meant to be, and you picked them at the perfect ripeness of the season. These were the best pears ever. And then you baked them in like
Yeah.
honey and
It does kind of have a little bit of a baked note to it.
and I think it's the wood
Yeah.
pear combo is making you think baked good.
The wood pear pairing.
I'm digging this.
Yeah, this is really nice. As I get to this point in a tasting, though, I'm always thinking like, what could be done to make it better? What would I change? What would I not like about it? Because we got to think numbers soon.
It feels like, and I think because my brain is automatically going to a baked pie, a baked fruit pie.
Yeah.
I feel like my mind is telling me it's pre-spiced. I feel like there's
a little bit. Yeah.
A little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of.
I already know one thing that I'm going to comment on.
Okay.
But it's good. I mean, it's good. It's good. It's good. At this point, you should be seeing our scoring system up on the screen. Basically, it's 1 through 10 with the occasional 11 if something's extraordinary. All right. 1, 2, 3, 7.5.
I really like it.
I like it too.
Brian wants to throw more stuff at it.
7.5 puts it in the great category.
Yeah.
I consider this to be a great recipe and a great mead. The only thing that I think it needs is more brightness. It's kind of monotone. It's got some.
Oh, you want a little punch of acid in there?
Yes, that's what I think it needs. I don't know if we'll be adding it to this. I think we'll leave it as is, but I think just a touch of acidity would have helped this. Even if we did like lemon peel in the beginning, might have been a help. Just that little nudge of brightness. Yeah,
Little.
not much.
Little.
But it has. Do you know what I'm talking about though? It almost has a monotone feel. It's complex. There's levels, but it's all the same level. All the same level. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I'm not explaining.
It's not punchy, but it's flavor forward. It's not like you have to search for flavor.
That's true. I just would like it to have a little bit more brightness, a little bit more acidity.
No, I can see that. My biggest concern would be
Will you mess up the balance of everything else?
right.
Yep. And that's always what you're playing with when you make adjustments to things. Had I thought of that when we were doing the flavor adjustments, I might have done it. But at this point, I'm afraid to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that pear note is really nice, but pear is also a very volatile flavor that it can just go
right.
and it could be gone if I added anything.
And because pear is such a delicate flavor, I had some concerns, even though in my mind that seemed like the right choice of fruit to go with this particular honey. I had concerns that the pear was going to be lost, and it is not.
Actually
it is a delightful, juicy pear.
But I have to give it my honest score.
No,
and that's where I'm at. This is a great mead, but it's not the most amazing thing we've ever made. How's that?
I'm going to go back for a little bit more, just a little bit,
Really?
just a little bit.
Because I was going to say goodbye.
Okay, you can say goodbye while I'm stealing more
All
of
right.
this mead.
Anyway, as always, guys, thanks so much for watching and have a great day.
Bye.